Case University Cap.
Yeah.
Great.
Everyone ready?
The 1AC is an accepting of the haunting. The resolution presents through a tapestry of written storytelling, stitching the movements between the past and the present, victimhood and agency, limits and possibility of the ghost. But beloved, it's a haunting of the slave that was never truly free, never truly dead, but always somehow within all of us. The 1AC engages in an act of remembering that allows us to confront the ghost and reclaim black life. The resolution begs the question, should we or not sell the gender slave organs, and was set the only value insofar as her ability to produce. She was able to take property from the plantation only because of her reproductive organs. The impact is neo-slavery. Black female organs become a target. We engage in the oddity of making legal to sell black reproductive organs because the 1AC of accepting a haunting is good. It questions the way in which the possession of the ghost of slavery exists in the black body. Now proves why the conversation is necessary. Also, first discourse is the first way to alleviate ontology. This discourse is not for whites, but for opening up forms of discourse for all others. Milton says that with poesis and the queer perspective, we can disrupt the current narratives that are heteronormative and white. It's also a question of accessibility. Who has access to discourse? The ability to talk black trauma is made invisible in certain institutions. 1AC is a process of freeing ourselves and providing women of color spaces and opportunities to have discursive responsibility. Without the 1AC, we can never understand the position of the gender slave body because they are not seen as having political autonomy. It means their stories never get heard. Also, institutionality in these spaces, slaves and the black bodies remain invisible until they become antagonists. Even once inside the institution, access is limited. They become hyper-visible. Bodies that inhabit these spaces become furniture, and we are left wondering, why is the chair speaking? This is the process of devoiding institutions, which is why we have to make visible our suffering and trauma. We want you to know the stories. This shit is really happening, but not our stories. The 1AC is the only way we can give it to you because we don't want to give you the real, which is why we use a process of fiction. Our Middleton evidence indicates that fiction is good because it allows for us to blur the lines between what is real and what is true. It allows for us to move in the in-between spaces. This is Middleton says that this is where liberatory thinking begins. Now you can go to their university argument. Look, we'll probably you can cross-play all of our Middleton evidence. It answers all of their university claims because being subversive is a good thing inside the academy. All of their evidence is probably only in the context of autobiographical narratives and telling a narrative, but it's not talking about the first of all the performance of the 1AC. The enactment of reading Beloved is a unique one that the 1AC, I don't think the 1AC necessarily talks about, but also the performance is a making of how we discuss things like ontology, and it also allows for us to come to terms with things like material violence, which is not just against black women, but also against the black community in general. Is also not just about the conversation, which is why performance is a good thing because it allows for us to chronologically use things like history in of itself, which is why this is our impact, is the violence that happens to the black slave in the status quo, which is why extinction is the biggest impact inside of this debate. Now, there's also the university arguments don't have an impact. And look, if our argument is that we are using fiction as a way to start liberatory thinking in a new form of fashion, then they should have to prove that what their cards are talking about is in the context of the act. Now, I'm gonna First of all, class can never be the single part of the discussion. This is how class is necessarily that because it universalizes bodies to a status of things like product value. Now, first of all, if you sit across our mode evidence, probably answers all of their cap arguments because mode talks about the external, the relationship between external and intrinsic value, and it talks about how that is interpolated for everyone except for the black community. And this is why they have started this debate with a question of subjectivity without taking into account the objectivity that is the black life in of itself, and unlike a snake or bear, dead nigga could not be skinned for profit and was not worth his dead weight in coin. The 1AC was already intersectional investigation of the intrinsic value institution systems like capitalism prescribed onto the black body because after having a blood-splat child clinging to her chest, she's swinging the baby right to left. School teacher taught her there was nothing left to claim. Our argument is for us, subjectivity doesn't exist. Bodies are rationed off, specifically Seppi, as she was only perceived as valuable based on her ability to reproduce. Mode said that this is the political despair black life unwillingly invites, and this ongoing extermination of black culture outlines our uniqueness question, and black collective history must be protected. It's tried. Middleton says queer women color must preserve their culture from genocide by writing to be remembered in a world that's trying to erase us. You heard the 1AC outweighs the alternative because ontological discourse provides a counter-memory that orients ourselves towards confronting societal structures that dehumanize and silence black women. Means the alternative can't resolve the ghost that is there, but it's not that which has no name, haunts us, the crawling baby. Their class analysis can never truly have an understanding of the gender slave order that is premised in the context of the negative, disregards race as a determining factor for sites of violence. The most common way in which folks on the left perpetuate racism by invoking form of class reductionism is the way in which they advance the notion of racism and secondary issue to class system that what leftists and radicals should be doing is spend more time focusing on their fight for dramatic transform the economic change rather than engaging with the derogatory term identity politics. Racism affects the lives of people of color quite apart from the classes of black and brown folks who are not poor working class and need are still activity to discrimination regulatory in the housing market on the part of the police and schools and the healthcare delivery system on the job for working class whites. So except for the indigenous of the class and still have the decided advantages over poor and white class people of color. Their spells unemployment are typically far shorter. Their ability to find affordable decent housing far greater, they're less likely to find themselves in resource forceful. Even blacks, Latinos, and middle class families and black folks with college degrees actually have worse health outcomes than white dropouts of the low income to ignore the unique deprivation of racism of border white friendly class analysis inherently marginalizing to the lived experience of black and brown folks in the United States. And what's more, to ignore racism is actually weaken the struggle for class unity and economic transformation. Unless we discuss the way in which racism, racial inequality weakens our bonds of potential, we never be able forward in truly progressive radical politics. Only coalition to look inward at the way racism and white privilege may operate within those formations of that. Also look outward at the way racism and privilege affects the issue around which we're organizing. Stop that racism has manifested itself into a completely different schema of oppression in the modern day and time, which is why we can never isolate how the gendered black slave became factories and the use of her organs as production value. Means a single generic explanation of the material class struggle is insufficient, and they don't even have an alternative. Their only argument is vote negative in order, but they don't even have an outline of how the performance of the 1AC necessarily began to take an investigation of the class system. Also, you should probably they make this argument about how our plan takes is linked to the capitalism argument. The status quo is what the negatives are pretty much saying. There are arguments that in the status quo we are commodities, but they have assumed that the selling of the plantex is one that says that we should sell for money. Our argument is that we should sell our bodies inside of this space. And it's a reason why another arguments matter because as long as it doesn't apply to the app.
Give black body value.
Yeah, we give the reappropriation of using things like black performances it allows for us to augment and cut through the status quo, and it allows for us to give the black body value. Also, they boxes in with this black feminism and black womanism argument. It boxes us into spaces about the 1AC necessarily determines what the 1AC necessarily does, which is bad because first of all, the 1AC talks about much more than that. It talks about the investigation of things like communal love, and also it allows for us to understand the ways in which history necessarily operates in terms of the gender black slave, which is I don't think the one in C necessarily said that, and they don't really have.
And they're essentializing black female knowledge claims.
Yeah, and they're essentializing black female knowledge claims. This debate should be centered around the scholarship that the 1AC has necessarily produced and the way in which it was necessarily good for us. It allows for us to start a necessary conversation about the effects of the resolution, and also this is why it necessarily has to start. It has to start now. Also now, legalizing it's an affirmation of the narration of fiction of Toni Morrison, and it allows for us to discuss the notion of being an illegal slave in the first place, which is the reason why it's not just about organs, but it's also more of a question of stance of survival and how we and what we do in order to reach that point, which is why we have to which is why we have to talk about that. Now, also, the 1AC produces an aspect of things like queer mothering because Septa only became valuable in her. She did not feel like her children were safe on the plantation. She only felt like she was valuable once she got her children off of the plantation, was allowed to take care of them in that instance, which is why the 1AC necessarily brings that value to herself in the first place, which is something that I don't think there are external advantages to the app that I don't think the 1AC necessarily encompasses. They don't have an impact to their capitalism argument, and I don't think that the alternative.
And even if they win the group calls, they get about the stems.
Yeah, there's no reason to
Okay, I want to start with the universities for a minute.
Yeah, sure.
You said that we need to talk about the violence against the black slaves today. What does that mean?
Yeah, I think the one I see was an instance of us using like things like beloved as an act of rememory. It allows for us to confront the ghost that is always with us, right? It allows for us to confront the ideologies behind the black slave. Why was the slave?
What is the judge affirming? If he votes that, what is the judge affirming?
He was affirming that the one he sees was a good idea. That
To
it produced knowledgeable, it produced
is it produced the knowledge of the black gendered slave, or the black
It produces a lot more
the black
knowledge than just
gendered
that.
slave?
Yeah, also the performance was
what
pretty
happened?
good.
Well, I love your performance.
Thank you.
That's fine, but what does that do?
That performance does a lot, actually. Like if you look back to the vote evidence, it literally talks about the intrinsic value that black performance and black reevaluations within academic spaces does for the black body, right? It says that we have an intrinsic value when our bodies are connected to a performance that we have the ability to perform out in academic spaces, which is what me and Anthony have been doing this entire round. It is a black performance of Toni Morrison's novel Beloved. And that is intrinsic.
So what happens when, say, a white professor takes Beloved and
white people already got Toni Morrison Beloved because that's how she got the Pulitzer Award, is when they got their little hands on it. So that's already been done, and the motive evidence already said
what is valuable about having that done again?
It's valuable because white people still can't understand it, right?
About what they get out of it.
Right, because me and Anthony just spun so much of the 2AC is literally a spin of the book that white people were never able to understand was what was produced from the book, because the book is subversive in itself, i.e. why subversiveness is good, which is why the 1AC is extremely valuable in terms of the academic space and the way in which Toni Morrison's scholarship is deployed.
Okay. Was there a permutation made on the case?
Yeah, it's always a permutation.
Yeah,
what was the phrasing?
It was an always already intersectional analysis of the way that capitalism affects the black population.
So you're doing both at the same time.
Okay. On case there was, you said not to use our stories is to know that the fiction. Why is it so important to use the fiction rather than?
Because it allows for.
Because the Academy doesn't deserve our stories, for one, right? They don't need the Academy does not to deserve to know Nicole and Anthony's real stories. But what you can have is what Toni Morrison allows you to have, right? Like you can have the mixed the stories that are blurred, the stories that are not able for you to comprehend. You can have that, but you ain't gonna have the real